Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Brotherly Love in the District. Tristan here, along with Jacob. And Jacob, you want to go ahead and tell them what we're getting into?
So in the NFL, obviously on Tuesday night, Washington took on Philadelphia, and it looked good for Washington for about a quarter. Then it all went downhill. Into hockey, some big news: the NHL has suspended operations until after Christmas, and they announced that NHL players will no longer be attending the Winter Olympics. On and on to baseball, we're going to be doing the all-time Nationals slash Expos slash Senators team. So let's get right into it. And before we do that, we're recording this on a Thursday, and tomorrow is Christmas Eve, which is probably going to be when we're going to be releasing this. So for anyone who celebrates, a Merry Christmas to you guys,
Merry
and
Christmas.
hope everybody has a happy holiday.
This is our Christmas episode.
I'm wearing a classic Caps jersey, so repping some red.
There's going to be Christmas football, which is kind of exciting.
That we haven't had that in a while.
Yeah, but like the last couple of weeks have thrown me off entirely with like all the like. For some reason, there was football last Saturday, which
why was that? Like
I don't
I
even
saw Spider-Man in theaters, and then I was walking past a bar. They were showing a Patriots Colts game. I'm like, I was so confused.
Yeah, I have no idea why they played on Saturday. And this past week of football just entirely like threw my week off because I'm so used to Eagles playing on Sunday because they only got two primetime games this season and they already played both of them. So I was like so used to Eagles playing on Sunday. And then they didn't play until Tuesday. And oh my gosh. So yeah, this entire week just threw me off completely. I'm trying to pull up why they played on Saturday. Okay, why? It was so it was based off of giving them a primetime game or not.
Oh.
Like based on how they were doing. So I'm guessing if they weren't as good as they are, they would have played on Sunday. So that's what I think the thing was. But yeah, so let's start off talking about obviously the Eagles Washington game got postponed from Sunday to Tuesday because of COVID, which honestly kind of hurt the Eagles more than it did Washington because the Eagles would have been playing a practice squad. But at the same time, you kind of did see a little bit of help there because I mean, if you're making a push for the playoffs and you're playing a practice squad, how much is that really going to help you going for the playoffs?
Yeah, that was a difficult game for both teams because if we were to play that Sunday, we wouldn't have barely any starters for Washington. We got a few back on Thursday. We got Landon Collins back, who ended up getting himself injured. We got
an interception.
Yeah, and a fumble. We got Montez Sweat and Jonathan Allen back, and shout out to Jonathan Allen. He's a Pro Bowl starter, so shout out to him. Yeah, but it just seems like we have so many players missing. We're a depleted squad. We played a lot better than I thought we would. Frankly, I thought it very well could have been a blowout. Garrett Gilbert, he didn't play awful towards the end. He did make some good plays, but we had some drop passes by receivers and some bad decisions that he made. And overall, our defense, I think, was too depleted to really do anything. So
the one thing that I have to say is you didn't run the ball enough. Granted, Antonio Gibson went out early with a toe injury, and you could see that it was affecting his game. But Washington didn't run the ball enough. And secondly, the offense was not clicking at all. Because if you look, the only times they actually did something was when they got short field because of a turnover. Like they had that Dallas Goddard drop that turned into an interception off of his heel. Then they had that fumble that they recovered. And then the other time that they had the short field, they got the ball, but there was a pass interference call that took them all the way down the field. So the only time they were actually able to produce was on a short field. You could see that Garrett Gilbert clearly did not belong on the field in that game and that he needed time. So I don't think the offense performed as well as it looked like it was, because there was no elongation of a drive. It was all just simple, small 20, 30-yard drives to
And I don't understand why we didn't throw the ball to Terry McLaurin more. He had 2 receptions for 51 yards. He averaged 25 yards a catch, and he had a really nice catch over your best cornerback in Darius
Yeah,
Slay.
I don't know how he caught that. That
made him look.
my mind.
That was an amazing play. He made Darius Slay look a little ridiculous. That was a great catch. Like, why didn't we target him more? Why didn't we throw the ball to him more? The only other time I think he targeted him was.
I thought you were saying targeting Darius Slay. I'm like, what do you mean? Why didn't you target Darius Slay? I saw something earlier. Darius Slay has only given up 2 100-yard games in his 9-year career. I think both of them were on the Eagles, though, against Devontae Adams and DK Metcalf last season. But yeah, that was a really good catch. And then on the other side of the ball, you saw a really good catch from Dallas Goddard, who absolutely ripped the ball from the safety.
I don't understand how 39, that was a horrible play by 39. How do you not?
I love that he's so far down the depth chart that you don't even know his name. You're just like, number 39.
I don't know, but every time a big play happened, it seems like he was always near it. His name is Jeremy Reeves. I sort of recognize him, but how did he, let's be real, Dallas Goddard should not have made that catch. That was an easily interceptable ball.
It was well underthrown, but it was also so Jalen Hurts looked Dallas Goddard down the entire way, and I don't know what happened with the receiver running the post route, because it didn't develop enough. Because if that receiver was 2 or 3 more yards towards the middle, then that would have been an easy catch for Goddard. Because if you saw the replay, you could see where Dallas Goddard was on the one side, and I think it was probably Jalen Reagor, I think, in the slot running a post, and he just wasn't far enough over. And that gave the safety time to go from his receiver over to Dallas Goddard to try to make a play on the ball. So, yeah, that's what happened there. But yeah, Dallas Goddard absolutely ripped that ball from his hands. And Dallas Goddard
he had a good game besides that weird back heel that led to an interception.
Well, he had 2 drop passes.
Yeah, he dropped the ball and then he backheeled it to Landon Collins, and
that was weird. I don't know how that happened.
Field a pick. I'm like, huh? I was
very. Yeah, I was so confused. I was watching. And I was like, it's an incomplete pass, and everyone's like, oh, but did he pick it off? And I was like, what do you mean? Did he pick it off? No, he didn't.
I thought that hit the ground.
Saw it, and it bounced off the back of
his heel, and then Landon Collins.
Exactly what we needed right now. But I mean, overall, Jalen Hurts had an amazing game. Dallas Goddard had a great game. Now, Jalen Hurts at first didn't look like he was having a great game, which he wasn't. He started out a little rusty. You could see he was struggling trying to move in the pocket. He was struggling locating receivers to throw the ball to. There was that one ball. This was more towards the end of the game where Kenny Gainwell was wide open on the goal line, and he threw it to Devontae Smith in the corner of the end zone, double cover.
Which made Devontae Smith get injured. He messed up his ankle or shin on that play.
He still ended up coming back out. So
yeah, but that was still a dumb pass to throw.
It was a stupid pass.
He almost caught it. To be fair, he also caught that ball on the sideline, which I don't know how he did.
Yeah, that catch was amazing.
I saw it. I'm like, no way, that's complete. Then I saw 1 toe, 2 toe. I'm like, how in the heck did he make that?
And in Jalen Hurts' defense on that pass, granted, he should have threw it to Kenny Gainwell, who was wide open on the goal line. But in Jalen Hurts' defense, he did put that ball in only a place for Devontae Smith to make a play on it. So It was a terrible read, but he at least put the ball in the best place he could
for Devontae Smith to try to make throws a play. Like that.
Yeah, so it was a terrible read, but he at least made a good play. He had a couple other good passes. He hit Jalen Reagor on a crossing route. That was a good pass. He did the same thing with Dallas Goddard on another 30-yard pass, the next play right after that. So he made good reads. He went 20 for 26, ended up 77%, which I think he could have gone 23 for 26 at least. If Dallas Goddard
interception easily could have.
Yeah, that interception should have been a reception by Dallas Goddard. Dallas Goddard also dropped a tight end screen, which should have been a catch. Both of those would have gone for like 30 yards because he had nothing but green in front of him. That could have put Dallas Goddard over 200 yards. And so, yeah, those were two completions. And then if he threw that ball to Kenny Gainwell instead of Devontae Smith, that's another completion. So I think he could have gone 23 for 26 in this game, breaking the 300-yard mark. And then
he almost broke the 300-yard mark. He was 4 yards away.
Yeah. The offense performed, aside from that first quarter, they performed pretty well, which, I mean, if you look at it, they hadn't played in over 2 weeks because they had the Jets, and then they had a bye week, and then they had that extra 2 days. So you could see that they need to shake off a little bit of rust at the beginning of the game, which I kind of expected. Jalen Hurts hadn't played in over 3 weeks because he didn't play that Jets game, if you remember. So, I mean, overall, I think they all played pretty good games after shaking off that little bit of rust in the first quarter. Miles Sanders is now the first running back with 200-yard games, 2 consecutive 100-yard games since LaShawn McCoy in 2014. So
But he doesn't get any touchdowns.
Yeah, he still doesn't have a touchdown.
Yeah, why are you guys so reluctant to give him the ball inside the 10-yard line?
I don't know if it's just the coaches or if Jalen Hurts just is like, yeah, let me.
He's a great open field runner, but you guys must not like him near the goal line. But yeah, you guys have followed the winning formula that I've said you guys should follow. Keep Hurts with anywhere from 20 to 30 throws and run the ball a lot. Jordan Howard had a great game as well. 15 carries, 69 yards, and Jalen Hurts, 8 carries, 38 yards.
Did you see Miles Sanders, 7.3 yards per carry?
That's insane.
And you could see in this game his home run ability because he had 2 or 3 good 20-yard rushes. So you could see his ability to make open field plays and get upfield. So
he easily could have had over 200 yards if you kept giving him the ball.
Yeah, but I don't know if he tweaked his ankle or something because he didn't play much in the fourth quarter. But I don't know if he tweaked his ankle a little or if they were just trying to avoid it from happening again because he did that against the Jets. So they didn't play him much in the fourth quarter. But yeah, he played a lot less in the fourth. And Jordan Howard, that's where Jordan Howard really took over. But overall, they ran the ball right down Washington's throat and made them pay for it. And overall, it was a great game for the offense where they go on to play the Giants where they need to win.
And the Giants, they aren't a good team, but I think the one thing that I will say about the Eagles, I think your guys' pass protection needs to get a little better because our depleted defensive line got 3 sacks on them. But did you see that sack that Jonathan Allen had that everybody was saying was a face mask, even though they didn't see the play fully, where he tried to get away, but Allen had a grab of his arm or jersey and then just pulled him down by one arm. So
yeah, I know
that was a great play.
He sacked him while he was being tackled, or while he was being blocked. So yeah, that was a great play. But this game had significant playoff implications, and now with Washington losing this game, it's going to make it a lot harder because now they still have to go through the Eagles one more time.
And we have to face the Cowboys again.
Yeah, so I mean this game had huge playoff implications for both teams because of the fact that you would be losing to a team you're like racing for. So that's what
pretty much put our playoff hopes all but to bed. I mean, I think it's almost done at this point with the amount of injuries and COVID cases we have. I just think we should just start trying new things in hopes that they work for next year versus trying to play for a playoff spot because I don't think it will happen.
I mean, overall, I think they still will because there's still an outside chance that they do make it. It's between the Saints, the Vikings, Washington, and the Eagles.
But I would prefer the higher draft pick over losing in the first round.
Yeah, Washington's a little bit. So my look at it is they're already in so deep in the playoff race. Why would you just give up now? Like that's the way I look at it because you're now drafting what instead of a 12th pick, you're going to get a 15th. Like
middle of the road.
It's still a middle of the round pick. It doesn't really matter. Eagles also have 3 picks in the first round. So that goes a little bit towards my bias towards where they're like, just go for it since you're already in so deep.
Yeah.
So it's between the Saints, the Vikings, Washington, and the Eagles. Washington's a little bit out of the way now since they did lose to the Eagles, but the Eagles do have the tiebreaker over the Saints. I don't know what the tiebreaker with the Vikings is, but they kind of need some help there. And the Vikings' remaining schedule is rough. So I don't see the Vikings being able to make the playoffs. I know they have Green Bay in Green Bay one more time. They have the Rams, and then they have the Packers in Lambeau, and then they have the Bears. So it's a tough road for them to make the playoffs because they have to go through 2 top teams in the NFC. The Eagles have the Giants, and then Washington, and then the Cowboys. And the Giants and the Cowboys game are both in Philadelphia, where this year hasn't been the greatest for them, but I'd still much rather a game in Philly than a game in New York or DC or Dallas. And then they have that game against Washington and DC in between those 2. And I'm going to pull up the Saints remaining schedule too, just to.
I'm going to talk about something a little more lighthearted for Washington fans. On this day in 2005, Washington had their Monday Night Miracle against the Cowboys, which, if you don't know, with 5 minutes left, Washington was down 13-0 to the Cowboys, but Mark Brunell threw 2 touchdown passes to Santana Moss to end up winning the game. An amazing game. My dad talked about this game. He went to bed knowing they would lose and woke up. We would always watch SportsCenter in the morning. He's like, wait, we won? So that's just a little bit of a happier thing to talk about. A great game by one of my favorite players, Santana Moss.
So the Saints have the Dolphins, the Panthers, and the Falcons left. So it'll really come down to the Saints and the Eagles, in my opinion, because I don't see the Vikings being able to beat the Rams or the Packers. But it's going to come down to the wire for the playoff race at the end. So let's talk about next week's games. And Eagles have the Giants, which they're looking for revenge here. I mean, they should not have lost that game 4 weeks ago now. 4 weeks ago, they shouldn't have lost that game to the Giants. So they should be looking for revenge here in Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts is playing well. Miles Sanders is playing well. Dallas Goddard and Jalen Hurts are finally starting to form some chemistry here. So I'm really hoping to see a really easy take the lead and just keep on plowing win here. I don't think the Giants really have any chance against the Eagles.
Yeah, the Giants aren't a good team, and they're probably going to be looking for a new quarterback in the offseason. I think Daniel Jones he isn't the guy. You're not that guy.
He's injured, isn't he? I think they could be playing Mike Glennon.
I think they will be. I know the Saints are starting a random quarterback as well. So that's good for you guys.
The Saints are starting a random quarterback? Oh, yeah, because they're still having quarterback.
The Giants are strongly considering Jake Fromm with another M. That's his last name.
Jake Fromm, State Farm. He's from Georgia. He got drafted a couple years ago to the Bills as Josh Allen's backup. So
you guys should be able to easily win this game. If you don't, you should really be ashamed.
If we don't, we shouldn't make the playoffs. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. And we're coming up against Dallas. We're most definitely not going to win because they're going to be fighting to clinch a playoff spot. So I just don't see a world where we win this game.
They already clinched their playoff spot, didn't they? With you guys losing?
I don't know.
Because I know if they didn't, then they're right on the verge because the only way that they would have missed is if Washington would win the division. That would be the only way that they wouldn't. So yeah, they didn't clinch the division yet.
Not yet, but I think they can. I think they can clinch the number 2 seed possibly here soon. I don't know if they already have, but
I'm trying to find the only way they would have been able to clinch the division is if there was a tie. I don't know how that makes sense, but it is what it is. Okay, that's weird. So yeah, the only way they could have clinched the division was a tie.
they can clinch the NFC East if they beat us.
Yeah.
Or if you guys lose. So it's they'll clinch it this week.
Yeah. I'm gonna not make the same mistake that I did last time Washington played the Cowboys, and I'm gonna pick the Cowboys to win.
I'm picking Cowboys. I made the same mistake last time as well. Yeah. My guess for that game, it's going to be 30-14.
I'm gonna guess. Let's see. Okay, so I think it'll all come down to Taylor Heineke starting. If he's starting, I will still give him. I'll give him like a 24-17 game. If he isn't starting, then yeah, I would go 30-13. Eagles game, I'm gonna say 31-14. And that's where I'll put that game because I think the Eagles are 10-point favorites against the Giants.
Yeah, I think you guys are gonna win. I'm gonna go 35-10. The Giants, I don't think will be able to do anything, and I can see you guys having over 250 rushing yards in that game alone.
Yeah. But I'm still kind of nervous about the Giants game because of what the Giants did last time. They shouldn't have won that. And so that's still like, are they really going to somehow pull out another win here? Although I don't think they will. I hope not. I think that's all we got from a football standpoint with the season coming to an end.
Yeah. And then hockey, there's not much, but the NHL announced that players will no longer be going to the Olympics, which sucks. And it means that I'm not going to be watching the Olympic hockey anymore because I try my hardest to try get interested in junior hockey, but I just can't. I mean, the Olympics, it was going to be so cool with having NHL players back, but now that they're not, I won't be interested in it.
So yeah, let's start off from this standpoint in the fact that the Christmas break got elongated because they originally had, I believe it was the 24th, the 25th, and the 26th off, I believe, for Christmas. And they went ahead and they canceled all the Tuesday games. There were no Wednesday games, and then all the Thursday games. And they postponed all those and just elongated their Christmas break. The only time no players or coaches or any personnel are allowed in any of the organizations until the 26th, where they go in for testing, and then they can go in from there and do practice and everything. So nothing gets executed until the 26th after they test negative. Then with that, they decided that they weren't going to allow NHL players to go to the Olympics, which, like you said, is a unfortunate event because, I mean, the NHL in the Olympics would make it much more interesting. And, like you said, it's just not as fun watching a bunch of junior hockey players play.
So, I know people who are really interested in junior, especially the World Juniors, but I'm not one of them.
The World Juniors, I feel like, is just a little bit more. Actually, I guess it would be the same, honestly.
Yeah, it's pretty much just going to be the same exact thing. It's just going to be bringing back the same teams, essentially.
Well, except, so, like, for example, I'm trying to think of.
Like players that have gotten drafted?
Yeah, players who have gotten drafted, like Cole Perfetti, who's playing for the Jets. I think he's still eligible to play in the World Juniors, but he won't be allowed to play in the Olympics. So, I mean, you have players who are so yeah, I guess the Olympics would be worse off competition than the World Juniors, because in the World Juniors you're going to be able to have players like Cole Caulfield go back, Cole Perfetti, who's the player on the Kings who got drafted number 2 overall? Can't think of his name. Yeah, Quentin Byfield, Lucas Raymond. You're going to be able to have all those players go back, where they're not going to be able to play in the Olympics because they're in the NHL. So yeah, it's actually going to be worse competition in the Olympics than it will be in the World Juniors. So yeah, like that's kind of unfortunate for the Olympics.
Yeah, it sucks, but I understand why they did it. They don't want a bunch of players going off to an area where there's going to be so many people from around the world. And I could honestly see if they did that, it could shut down the NHL longer than that break they had built in.
Yeah.
So I understand why they did it. And especially with this elongated Christmas break, they're trying to really contain the COVID cases and kill it. Just get their league back on track.
So I think they're actually going to bring in. So they originally had, I believe it was February 5th to 25th off for the Olympics.
Yeah.
I think they're going to put games in there now because they made 2 schedules at the beginning of the season, one for if the players did play in the Olympics and one for if they didn't.
Yeah, so that definitely should be interesting, because teams are probably going to try and get hot earlier, because you don't want to get hot just before that break and come back all depleted and stuff like that. So it should be interesting to see the hockey that is played during that time period. I think we could see some teams get hot and cool off in that time period. So could be interesting.
And this is going to bring back the season a little bit more. So we're going to be getting playoff hockey a little bit earlier, because they're going to be able to play more games a little bit earlier. So we'll see how that turns out. This is I'm on the topic of COVID, because I forgot to mention this when we were talking about football, but did you see the NFL is no longer testing vaccinated players? They are changing it now to, if you're vaccinated, you don't have to get tested like weekly. I think it was they were doing before. They'll now test like different position groups every week. So like this week it could be quarterbacks, next week running backs, next week O linemen. Just keep on doing that. Or if you're symptomatic, that's the only time they're going to test them. So they're trying to cut back on their COVID cases too, because they saw even with Washington being as vaccinated as they are, they were still having issues.
Yeah, we got 20 in the span of like 3 days. It was insane, like seeing name after name after name. So yeah, hopefully this will cut back.
But yeah, and with that, I want to talk we can go back and talk a little bit about the Flyers have won. I want to say it was since they hired Mike Yeo to be the coach, he has gone 4-2-1, and they had gotten 7 of their last 8 points in their games, going on to their only measuring stick games in the Capitals and the Penguins playing them this month, and those got postponed. So now I'm kind of curious to see how the Flyers are going to play out, which actually this could help a little bit, giving them a little bit of a break for Mike Yeo to try to put in his views on how he wants the game to be played.
Yeah, just consolidate some things, because that Washington and Pittsburgh game, that could have been detrimental to the confidence and the
those were measuring stick games because
I don't think you're quite ready for that kind of measuring stick game this early.
Yeah, because you could see they were starting to catch fire a little bit. Although you saw against Montreal, they went into the third period with a lead and kind of just let Montreal come back. But then right after that, they played Ottawa, and they went down 3-2 in the third period, came back and ended up winning the game in overtime. So like you could see the ebbs and flows that they were having of having a new coach and trying to figure out how they're trying to work out their games. So yeah, those would have been 2 tough games to see what would happen there. So I'm kind of interested to see how this plays out for the Flyers, trying to work in with their new coach a little bit and see what they can do now. And did you see Bruce Boudreau is 6-0 with the Canucks? Actually, I think he's 7-0 now.
Yeah, I'm happy about that because despite all the, I'm not going to talk about the playoffs because that's a difficult period, and that I don't think that was just Boudreaux. I think that was the whole team. We had to learn how to win the playoffs, but he gave us some great years, and I'm happy for Boost Boudreaux. He's doing really well in Vancouver, and
yeah, I have a good team too.
Yeah, I expected them to be good, like when the season started, but obviously their coaching wasn't working out, and I hope Boost Boudreaux works out for him.
Yeah, like they got Elias Pettersson, who's one of the best players in the league, in my opinion. I mean, he kind of reminds me a little bit of a younger Patrick Kane. I don't think he's at the level of Patrick Kane yet, but just his stick handling and the way he can shoot the puck from anywhere, I think he does kind of give off Patrick Kane vibes to me. And then Brock Besser, who has one of the best shots. He's a really good shooter. And then they also have Bo Horvat, Oliver Ekman-Larsson on the back end. Thatcher Demko is a really good goalie. He just wasn't getting enough support up front. So, I mean, yeah, they have a good team overall. It was just, I think the coaching was bad for them.
Yeah, and it looks like they've started to work things out.
Yeah, so I'm hoping they can kind of get into a little bit. I think with that, we're ready to go over to the Nationals all-time team, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of been a quick episode so far.
Yeah, well, with the amount of like COVID cases that have happened and all that stuff, it has kind of been a slow week.
It really has. I mean, but hopefully this will be an interesting one because I think you have a little bit more knowledge about like baseball overall than I do. So I think you were able to determine. And also, I think the Phillies all-time team was a little bit easier because a lot of the players came from one time frame.
It's basically most of the players from the 2008 team, then a few from your World Series team from back in the 80s.
Yeah,
that's pretty much what it is. I mean,
a lot of the same.
I had Richie Ashburn, which is an older Phillies player. I don't think we know baseball well enough to include some Philadelphia A's players, even though I don't think we could really include them in this.
Yeah,
into your team. So, yeah, the Phillies are a lot easier.
Speaking of the A's, how about that Oakland A's legend Kyler Murray?
Playing amazing. Losing to the Lions.
Oh yeah, that was brutal. I'll let you start because you're obviously
sure. I think we're both gonna have the same person. I have Gary Carter.
Where?
Catcher.
Oh yeah. Wait, so what? Yeah, I put Gary Carter, but I also wanted to give a little shout out to Montreal Expos legend Tom Brady.
Yeah, catcher. He didn't play a single game with him.
He got drafted by the Expos at catcher and never played a single game. I think he obviously chose the right sport, being greatest quarterback of all time. But
Gary Carter in 12 seasons with the Expos, he had a 55.8 WAR, 220 homers, 823 RBIs, 371 doubles. One of the best catchers in the history of the game. You can't really argue with that. He was a mainstay for those Expos teams.
Yeah. First base. I'm kind of curious to see who you put here because I put someone here that I saw a lot at a different position, but I ended up putting Ryan Zimmerman here.
I didn't put Ryan Zimmerman here because I think his best years came at third base. Who I put first baseman, he only played 2 years with the Nationals, but he was the first Nationals home run I ever seen. Do you know who this is, Tristan?
No, I can't really see that now.
This is Adam Dunn. He was one of my favorite players growing up, and he only spent 2 years with the Nationals, but they were 2 amazing years. I'm going to pull up his stats real quick because his 2 years with the Nationals were really great. In both years, he had over 38 home runs and over 100 RBI. In his first season, he had a 928 OPS, and in the second year, 892, which is an amazing, amazing season. I think it was his last true great season. He did go on to hit 41 homers in 2012, but he had a 4-bowl batting average for his standards. So yeah, Adam Dunn. I mean, that's kind of a biased homer pick, but I put Adam Dunn at first base.
Hey, I mean, this entire segment is based off of you being a homer, so
Yeah, and the thing about Adam Dunn, all of his homers were moonshots. Like, I believe he hit one of the longest homers in the recent area. It was when he was playing for the Cincinnati Reds. It was well over 500 feet, and it actually went out of Great American ballpark. I think that's the Reds stadium.
Name their ballpark. All right, who do you have at second base?
Second baseman, this was a little harder. I had to do some research on this, but Jose Vito.
Yeah,
he
same.
He played for both the Expos and the Nationals. He hit 301 with a 111 OPS plus. So yeah, but other than that, there really wasn't a lot of second basemen we could really choose from.
The middle infield was hard.
I think that was the toughest part of this team for me.
Because going on to shortstop, like there are two obvious picks here. There's one really obvious pick here, but I didn't want to pick him because he's no longer on the team, and he's still young enough to make better plays with the Dodgers in Trey Turner.
We're going on a shortstop, but I put Trey Turner on the team mainly because I really couldn't think of anyone else. I mean, yes,
you put Ian Desmond,
but
he's another player
who was never the player that Trey Turner was, in my opinion.
And he also was another one of those guys who was, he was there, but he ended up going on to another team, and like he's still young enough that he could put up good numbers with that team. So the middle infield was hard.
Yeah, that Jose Vito and Trey Turner, that was a difficult set of positions.
But, I mean, hang on, because I know Trey Turner has. Hang on one sec. I want to say I know he's hit for the cycle quite a bit. So I mean he's hit three times for the cycle. Yeah, he's only the fifth player in league history to hit for the cycle 3 times in his career, tying an MLB record for most career cycles. So I mean, I think that's why you got to put him up there, because I don't think he did it with the Dodgers, which means he did them all in a Nationals uniform.
Yeah. So who do you have at third base? Because I have Ryan Zimmerman at third base, Mr. National. I don't think we can really argue with that. Who do you have at third base?
So the reason I put Ryan Zimmerman at first base is because I really only know him as a first baseman. Because I did see a lot where he was at third base, but I ended up putting Tim Wallach at third base. In his career, 737 runs, 204 home runs, 905 RBIs, 50 stolen bases, a 259 batting average, 3.7 on base percentage, of 418 slugging. He served as Montreal's main third baseman for over a decade. He had consistent power throughout the years, earned 5 All-Star appearances with the team, and he never reached the playoffs because the team wasn't good around him, but he was a consistent bat in the lineup for the Expos. So that's why I put him there, because like I said, I only really know Ryan Zimmerman as a first baseman, but I did see a couple places where they put him as a third baseman. Didn't the Nationals have Jordan Zimmerman for a bit too?
Yeah.
That's right.
We traded him to the Tigers. So I think it was in the Max Scherzer deal.
I don't
know specifically, but he did end up on the Tigers.
Who are your outfielders?
So my 3 outfielders are Andre Dawson, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and a bit of a surprise, but to me it's not, Bryce Harper. I know some people are probably expecting Soto, but the only reason I don't have Soto,
I was expecting Soto.
He hasn't won an MVP yet, and he's only been on the team for 3 years. Bryce was on the team longer and did win an MVP. I do think Soto is ultimately going to take his place, but for now I'm sticking with Bryce Harper.
So I didn't know Vladimir Guerrero played for Montreal. So that came
his first years, and his best years were with Montreal.
Yeah, so that came as a surprise to me going through this, which is actually kind of, because as I was looking this up, I learned a little bit about like some certain players. Like I never knew Vladimir Guerrero was technically a National. So that came as a surprise to me. But I put Vladdy out there. I put Andre Dawson out there, and then I put Tim Raines out there because I didn't want to put Bryce Harper out there because he's another one of those players where it was like, yeah, he's a good player and he did good with the team, but now he's on another team. And like Bryce Harper is still young enough that he already won an MVP as a Philly. Ideally, he will bring a World Series to Philadelphia. How I said ideally, how quickly that'll happen, if ever, not entirely sure about that because the organization is having a little bit of trouble building around him. But yeah, I mean, he's still young enough where he can still create a separate career in Philadelphia than he did with Washington. Excuse me. So that's why I didn't put him in the outfield there. I expected you to put Juan Soto out there, though. I didn't want to put Juan Soto out there because he hasn't been up there long enough. And yeah, who's your pitcher?
Max Scherzer, but like for me, it was between Scherzer, Walter Johnson, or Pedro Martinez. Looking back on the Expos, we could have been an amazing team because once upon a time in the same rotation, we had Pedro Martinez and Randy Johnson. Let's just think about that for a second. We had Randy Johnson. We traded him for nobody. If we kept Randy Johnson and Pedro Martinez and they reached their prime in the same exact times, the Nationals would have never existed. And we'd be talking about Montreal. They would have had the best 1-2 pitching punch in MLB history. That pitching staff could have had the possibility of carrying a team deep into the playoffs. I don't know about winning a World Series, but they definitely could have led us to some deep playoff runs. And that's just crazy to think about. We had two of the top 5 pitchers of all time in the same rotation at the same time. It must have sucked for Montreal fans back in the day. That must have really sucked.
So I also ended up putting Max Scherzer, but I was debating putting a name that you didn't list up there at this spot. You know who I'm thinking of?
Strasburg?
Yeah. I mean, he's been a rock in the Nationals rotation for how long now? He won the World Series MVP.
Or 12. But for me, he hasn't been consistent enough. He's been injured a decent amount of times.
Yeah. And I mean, Max Scherzer, like, one reason that I ended up putting him over Strasburg is Max Scherzer is obviously one of the greatest in Nationals history. He's won multiple Cy Young awards. He was up for a Cy Young again this year. And so I ended up going with Max Scherzer because later down the road, when you think of Max Scherzer's career, you're not going to think of him as a Tiger or a Dodger. You're going to think of him as a National. So that's why at the end of the day, I did end up going with Max Scherzer there instead of Steven Strasburg. But yeah, I was thinking about maybe putting Strasburg there.
Yeah, and shout out to Walter Johnson. He was one of the first true fireball pitchers back for the Washington Senators. A true legend of the game, one of the first great pitchers in the league that really threw really hard. So played over for 20 years, was a great pitcher, but I just don't think he would be able to match up to Scherzer. But he did win the pitching triple crown 3 times, which is pretty good. And he spent his entire career with Washington Senators. In 1 year, he went 36-7 with a 1.14 ERA. I don't care what era you're in. That's impressive. That's impressive.
I think with that, that's really all we got here. A little bit of a shorter episode today because, like we said, it's been a bit of a slow week with hockey stopping. The Eagles and Washington game getting postponed. Hopefully we won't have to go through that again because that threw me off entirely. And obviously you want to see every team be healthy throughout the season and put out the best team they can. But with that, that's all I got. What about you, Jacob?
That's all I got. And once again, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas. You can go out and You can rate us on Apple, and now you can also rate on Spotify. So you can go out and rate us on Spotify. You can leave us comments and reviews in the Apple podcast. They don't have that in Spotify yet, but you can go out and do that. You can follow our Instagram at BL in the DC, and you can DM us and DM us questions and comments that you want us to put on here. And you can also email us at blindc@gmail.com with comments and questions to bring on here too. So with that, I think that's all we got, and we will see you guys next week.
See you guys later.